Shabbat Shalom, Mishpachah. Zaken Efraiym coming to you one more time with another message regarding this series that I labeled The Works of the Devil. So far we've gone through, some of the foundational stuff regarding Elohim and his works, and how, for lack of a better way of sort of rephrasing it, this idea of good and evil really is often misunderstood. We've seen through several passages how the word shaitan and several other words like it, I think there was zar, and then there was robe, that were talking about striving and contending and narrowing of a way. We saw how the word shaitan was used regarding the messenger of Yahuwah that was standing in the path when Balaam was trying to go through, and the donkey was squeezing his leg against the wall. We saw all of those different kinds of witnesses, but what we didn't see in there was a quote-unquote personal devil. And the reason I want to go there is because it seems as that the testimonies from the Tanakh have one perspective, even though we see a little divergence between, Second Shemuel and First Chronicles that we went through already, and how it was the displeasure of Yahuwah, and then it was in Chronicles, the same passage is sort of rewritten, and is rewritten to say that Hashatan, or Satan, did this thing. And we talked a little bit about that. So go back and review if you need to. But this is I want to just ramp up a little bit here. So what we didn't look at least not carefully, and maybe we don't need to for this audience. We didn't talk about Job, and how the book of Job says that the sons of Elohim came up to the Most High, and Hashatan, or Satan, was with them. And this gives a kind of a, I don't know, just sort of starts to form a little bit of a different twist on this generic adversarial, this generic opposition, or wrestler, or troubler, or whoever the case is. But it doesn't get as clear as we find in the Brit Hadashah. So we're going to talk a little bit about this transition, and we're going to leave some out because some of it is in the apocryphal books that I'm not prepared to present to this group just yet. But I'm on the other side, I'm writing something out that will be a booklet, or some kind of a writing that I think will articulate some of these points that will be very lengthy to do in a video, especially for folk who aren't familiar with some of the middle period, or the intertestamental period, if you listen to some people, the time between the Tanakh and the New Testament. There were writings, set apart ones, and people say that the Elohim was silent, but obviously not, because there were writings that were found both outside and inside of Qumran, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and these books are valuable. In fact, they give us a great deal of color to what otherwise is sort of like question marks. If you dig, you'll find that you can't dig enough into the Tanakh, you can't dig enough into the New Testament to sort of understand some of what is revealed pretty clearly in those books. But again, we're not going to go too deeply into those. We're certainly going to mention some of them. So where was I at? So here we are in the next iteration of this lesson, and let's get started with prayer. Abba, we bless you because you are El Elyon, and you know why I love that title, Abba, because it says that you are the Elohim of all Elohim. That you are, if there were capital letters in Hebrew, you are El Elyon, and any other might, any other strength, any other power is so much lesser than you are, and under your ultimate authority. And I pray that you would let that truth ride through this lesson so that none of the listeners will misunderstand that I'm talking about something, you know, strange, bizarre, out of character to what's going on and what has been going on for a long, 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 long time. Open our understanding, our bar. Cause us to see things, the glimpses that we need to see that will help strengthen our faith and strengthen our understanding of the importance of relying upon you. And we bless you for these things. Hallelujah and amen. All right, so let's get cracking. All right. So there's a word. There's a word that's used in the Tanakh. In fact, it's in the book of Hosea. If you look in chapter 9, let's turn there. Hosea chapter 9. And this word is really interesting because of the fact that it is used both as an action or adjective, maybe even, and it's later developed into a personal noun. And so it kind of bridges this gap or starts to bridge this gap between, you know, general evilability. No, I made that up, so hang in there with me. General evil stuff and evil coming from a place, and evil having a persona, even up to evil having a personality that is the one who is the quote unquote ruler of evil. And this is a very touchy point here, set apart ones. And the reason why is because we already read Yeshayahu. We already read that in previous video. And we saw that the Most High says that he maketh evil. And so he in effect was owning everything. And when I say owning, I think it's difficult for some to understand that what he's not saying is that he is evil. What he's saying is that there's not anything that is that he didn't make. And this perception of evil, just like the perception of an adversary that we talked about in the last video, kind of depends on where you sit. Because from from the land's perspective, when you cut down all the trees and make a house, you're executing violence over the land. And if the land was a person, if the land had a personality, and even though it doesn't have a personality like an anthropomorphic personality, it's not a person, the land is wounded. And from its perspective, you did the wounding. And from its perspective, you did the evil. And I hope you're following me. And so this idea of perspective is so important. And this is why we have to align ourselves with Elohim in such a way to where we escape this trap or this pitfall that was really created by our first father Adam in the garden. Because up until then, Adam and Kawa had no knowledge of good and evil, and they partook of this tree that opened it up to them. Their eyes were open, and so as hard as it is for modern people to understand, what those passages say is that their eyes were closed to judgment, and all they did was trust their father. Now, it seems naive, it seems counterintuitive, it seems like something that, it would retard someone, but it really doesn't. What it does is it provides a unpenetrable envelope, a place where you are safe, a place where you can rely upon things and not have any worry, concern, etc. Isn't that what the garden was, y'all? Isn't that how it was going? I mean, He walked with Elohim in the cool of the morning, the ruach of the morning. He may have been tilling the ground. He had named all the animals. He had an Isha. She was bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. And all of these things that even from our modern outside the garden perspective were like perfection, right? That's what he had. Right up until that interaction with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so this perspective is so important. And if we're in Yahusha, if we're in Yahuwah, Yochanan chapter 17, if Haruach is in us, hallelujah, then what needs to happen is that we need to submit ourselves to that as completely as we possibly can and keep praying that we can do it the more. Because then when we see things, we see them how he sees them. When we have to judge whether we like or don't like or etc. thing, we're judging like he judge. We're basically surrendering ourselves back into our source and saying, well, who could know better? And this is one of the things that, without jumping too far ahead, this is one of the things that this evil we call the devil is propagating in mankind. And that's the I think I'm right. I think I know. You can't know better than me. Who do you think you are going to tell me kind of thing? What does that sound like? That sounds like pride. It sounds like arrogance. It sounds like foolishness. If Elohim was, is, and always will be, then how in the world could we know more than him? All right, back to where we were reading. I think I said it was in Hosea chapter 9. All right, so here we are. I think it's down around 7, verses 7 and 8. And it reads, the days of punishment have come. The days of retribution have come. Yisrael knows the prophet is a fool. The man of the spirit is mad because of the greatness of your crookedness, and great is the enmity. Elohim's watchman over you, Efraiym, is the prophet, but a trapper's snare is in all his ways. Enmity is in the house of Elohim. So that word translated enmity, when we look at it in the KJV, we'll see that word is actually translated as hatred. And that word hatred translates from, I should say, a Hebrew word, which is mastima. Mem shin mem mem he. And this is Hebrews letter 4895 for those who care about the strong numbers. But this word matsima is being translated hatred, but strangely enough, in the book of Jubilees, this becomes the name of a spiritual entity. Well, I shouldn't say it becomes, but it's revealed as a name of a spiritual entity. And this spiritual entity is pretty wicked. It's got an intention. And if we walk through what its intention is like, it sounds like the devil. It sounds like the New Testament version of the devil. It sounds like what most of you all know as the devil. It seems as though his intention is to steal, kill, and destroy. And so here we have this spiritual entity who's got a name, but the name is from hatred. And if you really kind of marinate on that a little bit, then and you realize that there's been this war in the cosmos that's going on, and from the perspective of the opposing sides, there's hatred. There's the desire to destroy the other side or to subdue the other side at the very least. And so this is another one of those little steps in the direction of finding a personal devil or a personal shaitan that we find in the New Testament. And we're going to go there in a minute. But I wanted to go through that as well as a couple of other things first. Looks like Bamidbar 35, 21 through 22. If y'all turn there with me. Bamidbar 31, 22, 35, 21, and 22. That word again is translated as enmity. I'm reading it from the KJV this time. Let's start back at 19. Or the revenger of blood himself shall slay the murderer when he meeteth him, and he shall slay him. But if he thrust him of hatred, or hurl at him by laying of weight that he die, or enmity smite, or in enmity smite him with his hand that he die, he that smote him shall surely be put to death, for he is a murderer. The revenger of blood shall slay the murderer when he meeteth him. So this is all about that city of refuge, and the setup that the Most High gave, so that when somebody, I think the picture was in the Torah, that if his axe flew off the handle and it killed someone, that he didn't do it on purpose and he shouldn't be killed for it. He didn't take that life intentionally, and he should have some place to go until people cool off, because you killed my brother, and rightfully so, right? Because people get mad when these kinds of things happen, and they react in without thinking, and maybe they do think, and they think that they should owe a life for a life, even though it was an accident. So all that to say, again, that word matzma shows up there. It shows up again, and I'm not going to turn to this one, in Ezekiel 25, but this time in 25 and 15, it's translated like perpetual hostility. And so the reason I'm saying I like that, I don't like perpetual hostility, but the reason I like that version of it is because what that tends to speak to is that adversarial position that both Matsuma and Hashatan have in common, because his or their, or the plan that they both seem to be on, is based upon a perpetual hostility against the kingdom of Elohim, a perpetual hostility against the subjects of the kingdom of Elohim. And this is sort of I'm building it out. I'm building out further and further towards this bridge between how did we get, from an adversary in the book of Job who came up and he simply accused Job, and it doesn't have the sort of malicious flavor that we see in the New Testament, but because these beings set apart ones, because these beings have been around a long time, we would err to think that they just popped up down the road. They didn't just pop up. What happened is that we just got, at least scripturally, or it was just written out, and we read about what they were doing, or how they felt and positioned themselves against the kingdom of Elohim. But it wasn't that they didn't exist in the first place. All right. So Jubilees turns this now into a personal name and title for an adversarial angel, and this angel had so many of. In fact, I don't know if I can pull it up without looking for the book on my iPad, but if I remember correctly, this messenger asked if he could take some of the angels with him as he rebelled, and he was granted, if I remember correctly, 10% of them. Now, you may again be familiar with some of the ideas that that some of the stars or some of the messengers went with Hashatan when he fell, when he left. And so there's this parallel here that's happening that I think is worthy of talking about. All right. So I think that the concepts of um, adversary or somebody striving against or pressing against the righteous is something that's held very clearly by what we think of as the quote unquote devil, what we think of as any sort of devil or satanic or Satan like presence, activity, etc. And so I see a thread. I'm going to throw this out there. I'll probably have to open it up more in the following um, video, and I'm going to open it up even more in the book that I'm writing, the booklet that I'm writing. But there seem to be three characters throughout the Tanakh, the Intertestamental period, and the New Testament. And one of them we've seen, several times. We probably know this name Belial, and it's a worthless one, but it's used as a son of Belial. I believe Abigail's husband was called a son of Belial, and it was as if to say he was worthless. And that worthlessness can manifest different ways, but he was worthless. But the idea that he's a son of Belial could sound like vernacular, like a thing you say like, yeah, he's a cool dude, something like that. But in this case, it's actually tying together a lineage. In other words, saying that this person and Belial are in cahoots, whether they even know it. Set apart ones, they're aligned with Belial. If all somebody did was steal, and we're going to find this clearly in the passages I'm going to read out of the New Testament in a minute. But if all someone did was steal from me, and if they came around and they killed my dog and they tried to kidnap my, wife or children or anything like that, don't you know that would be Hashatan to me, right? Hashatan to me, because he's an adversary. You get it? If they were just accusing me of stuff day and night, in fact, we went through that, I believe, in Proverbs, this enmity between the brothers where they can't get along. That is the work of Hashatan. That is alignment with the devil. And so I don't know, but I hope these concepts are tying together. They're a little bit difficult for some of us, but I'm hoping I'm making them clear. So let's go on. So I'm going to read out of I may have read this before, but I'm going to read out of Zechariah, and then we're going to go and read some Brit Hadashah words. And he showed me in Zechariah chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. He showed me Yahushua, the high priest, standing before the messenger of Yahuwah, and Satan standing at his right hand to be an adversary to him. So again, is it a Satan? The Bible tends to like to capitalize this as though it is a proper noun. I'm not sure I'm convinced they're always right with that capitalization, but I gotta throw it out there as a sort of, flag it for you all. And Hashatan, or Satan, standing at his right hand to be an adversary to him. And Yahuwah said to Satan, Yahuwah rebuke you. Yahuwah rebuke you. Satan, who has chosen Yerushalayim, rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire? And Yehoshua was dressed in filthy garments and was standing before the messenger. And he answered and spoke to those who stood before him, saying, remove the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, see, I have removed your guilt from you. Remember, one of the things that Hashatan was famous for was that accuser, that prosecuting attorney, that one that's going to get you in trouble for what you did. So in this case, he says, remove those filthy garments from him. And he said, I've removed your guilt from you and shall put costly robes on you. And I said, let them put a clean turban on his head. Then they put a clean turban on his head and they put garments on him. And the messenger of Yahuwah stood by. And so we see this picture where a Satan, Ha-Shatan, is standing there and accusing the brethren, and yet the Most High is saying, lo, I rebuke you, get back, because I've called him my own. Now you see this picture where he's got these filthy garments on, and I hope I don't have to explain to you what that picture is. I mean, filthy garments as opposed to white ones that are clean and without spot or wrinkle. So he has these filthy garments on, and it's the Most High's operation. This is so important. It's the Most High's operation to take those filthy garments off of him and put on clean garments and a clean turban. And so this is precisely what the Most High does for us. He washes us. None of us are saved on the path to salvation, being saved, however you theologically want to say it. None of us are in that position because we've all of a sudden, came to the Most High and gave him our report card of life and says, I got 100 on every test. No, we're more likely failed so many things and got to the point to where we hit our knees and said, please, Abba, help me, because I don't see I'm gonna make it. I see your standard and I'm not up to it. By myself, I can't do this thing. And so I thought that was interesting to read, and a good segue to, again, talk about some of the non-canonical books, but let's go all the way into the Messianic writings. And I promise you that I'll get back to that non-canonical books, and I'll get back to it in a couple different ways. Once about talking about the canon. I'm just throw that out there. So I was doing a lot of research regarding many things that I've been studying, and I found evidence that this story that people have been telling each other, especially in quote unquote Western Christianity and in most of the Hebrew organizations, that what's his name, 300 AD dude, the Roman Constantine. That Constantine had changed the books in the Bible, and that the Council of Nicaea was all about that, and he stepped in and he took out the books that we kind of learned to love. All of the apocryphal books that were taken out, he did that. And I found out that there's no real evidence of that. In fact, it looks quite like he didn't have anything to do with picking books, and that maybe even the Council of Nicaea had nothing to do with canonizing the Bible as we know it. Look it up for yourself. I mean, do a diligent search. There are lots of tools out there these days. Do a diligent search, and it raises the question that, at least for me, it's like, because I'm always asking myself this question, like, whose truth is truth? And it's like, I find out all the time that people have been lying and saying the same lie over and over again, and it has been adopted as truth. And this is uncomfortable to me, because I want to walk in truth, I want to love truth, and there are many things that I can't know because I wasn't there. And then when you get some testimony, some documentation, some receipts about what really happened, how easy is it for you to forsake that thing that you thought up until then? This is really what determines whether you love the truth. You remember in one of Shaul's letters where he says that people didn't love the truth, and so for that reason Elohim gave them a strong delusion. I pray I never find myself there. So let's back the tape up. I'm sure I had been there. I hope I'm not going to be there again. I hope I'm not there now in any sense, in any real sense. But the point I'm making is that if you love the truth, then evidence and conviction by Haruach is always enough to repent. Don't delay it, set apart ones. You know he's been speaking to you about something, or he will speak to you about something. At what point will you submit to it? I mean, don't be a hater of the truth and saying you walking in the truth. It doesn't work like that. So we're going to go through a few passages in the book of Matthew. We're going to start out in Matthew chapter 4, a famous one. Everybody on the call or on this watching this video should know this one. So Matthew chapter 4, let me pull it up. And Matthew chapter 4, verse 1, it says, read from the scriptures version, Yahushua was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tried by the devil. All right, so tried by the devil. So there's a Greek word here. If you know Spanish, this Greek word is easy to remember, diablos. And so it's devil, and it shows up like 35 times. Sometimes it's accuser, sometimes it's false, sometimes it's slanderous, but most of the time it's devil. So he's being tempted by the devil. After he fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterwards a hunger. And when the tempter, the devil, came to him, he said, if you be the son of Elohim, I'm reading KJV now, command that these stones be made bread. Now we know this story, or at least many of us do, but he answered and said, it's written that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Elohim. And then the devil taketh him up into the holy city and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple. And he said unto him, if you be the son of Elohim, cast yourself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against the stone. And Mashiach or Yeshua said unto him, it is written again, you shall not tempt Yahuwah your Elohim. And again the devil taketh him up into an exceedingly high mountain, and showeth him all of the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he said unto him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Now I'm going to pause there for a second, because there's a couple of nuggets that are just ringing in my head while I'm reading this. And the last one is this idea of fall down and worship me. So worship and obedience go hand in hand. Who you submit yourself to is who you're worshiping. What you submit yourself to is what you're worshiping. And let's get it straight, right? Because, in the Tanakh we see these pictures where men of Elohim would, give obeisance to each other and do things like this, kind of bow and sort of like that. We see in certain customs, even today, some of the Oriental countries where, a bow or whatever is something that they do normally in order to pay respect. And that's not what I'm talking about. That's not it. What I'm talking about is when you submit yourself wholly to a thing as though it is like unto Elohim. It's like, well, I gotta work, Ephraim, or I'm gonna eat. Yeah, I know. And more importantly than me knowing, the Most High knows it. But the challenge is that the enemy wanted him to bow before him. So if this is a polite Oriental bow, he wanted him to bow down before him, like, crazy bow, like prostrate, like even if it's not physical, to mentally and spiritually submit himself to it. To call him to be high and mighty above him, to lower himself as though to exemplify this distance between him and the devil. The same thing that we would do if we prostrate ourselves in prayer. It's like, Father, we are low, and the reason I'm on this dirt is because I am trying to exemplify, show, I'm trying to manifest a picture that gives a hint, because it's still weak, a hint of the distance between me being down here and you being up there. Now, I know you're with me, but you still get the picture, Abba, and I pray that you all get the picture. So what the enemy is asking him to do is to submit himself to him. And so his carrot in front of him is, if you do that, then I'll submit all of that unto you. And so now we're thinking, oh man, pride of life. If you do that, man, I'm the big shot. I'm the big shot. So most of us won't say, I want to be the big shot, but we really have to be careful that we're not exalting ourselves and going after vainglory, trying to be the quote unquote big shot, instead of being the shot that the Most High made us to be. Because he made you special over something that, believe it or not, I'm not special over. And he made me special over something that maybe you're not special over. But if we were like working together for the kingdom of Elohim, then we got two special spots covered. And so even together as us two, we shouldn't say, oh, well, that person over there, they not as special as us too, because they're special over a spot, and if they work together, then, oh, did you get the picture? Now we got three special folk working in their specialties toward the kingdom of Elohim, and this is what the Most High is drawn, where we recognize our need for each other, where we submit unto him and watch him do the thing. But the enemy is saying to Mashiach, hey, cast yourself down. He'll hook you up. Verse 10 says, and he said to Yahusha, then Yahusha said to him, get ye behind me. And he calls him this name again, Satan. And this name is different than Diablos, y'all. So in the Greek is Satanas. And it says a Chaldean origin with a definite article affixed. In other words, it would have a ha in front of it. The accuser, that is the devil. So we went from devil, Diablos, to Satanas, the prince of evil spirits. So when you look up Matzma, you're going to find out that he was the prince of evil spirits. And it's like, well, did Hashatan change his name? Or did he like morph into something else? Or was he around? Or is he working with Matzma? What's going on here? And it's really difficult to discern that. It really is. But what's very clear is that the people of Elohim, by the revelation of Elohim, had an understanding that there was a hierarchy and leadership in the realm of evil, in the realm of darkness. And this realm of darkness existed during the time of the Tanakh, during the time of the intertestamental period, and during the Brit Hadashah, and guess what? Now. And it's amazing. I'm trying not to jump to the end here, to not the end of today's lesson, but the ending points of the whole lesson, and in that there is this cosmic battle that's going down. I keep quoting out of Ephesians chapter 6. I keep quoting out of Daniel chapter 10. I keep doing that because those passages make it so clear to us that there's something going on in the unseen world, or in the realm that we don't see, that is impacting what we do see and what we do walk in every day. And it's like, what do I do in order to both defend and to oppose this darkness? Walk in the light. What do I do? I seek Elohim that I live. I humble myself in the sight of Yahuwah. I resist the devil that he would flee. Submit myself to Elohim first and resist the devil that he would flee. I humble myself in the sight of Yahuwah that he would lift me up. I pray for those that I care about and the ones I don't care about, because what I'm looking for is that light. Come on now. So in Jacob he says, ain't no shadow in his turning. But this other thing, this other side of the fence, it moves in the shadows, set apart ones. So what am I doing over in the shadows? I mean, if I'm sent, then I'm sent with a glow on me. Hallelujah. A glow like unto Moshe, where, he had to put that veil on. If I'm sent, then that light is the light of Elohim that's coming forth in my life and coming forth from my being by Haruach. That's one thing. But what we find set apart ones doing is hanging out in the shadows and wondering why they're not getting that traction in their walk that they want, that they desire. They say they want, that they desire, and they don't realize it's like some of it's the company you keep in. Some of it's the place where you work. Some of it's the people you quote unquote getting intimate with and you got no business. It's because the devil is an opportunist. And this is whether you believe in the quote unquote personified devil or there's some position of accusation. You are giving ammunition to the accuser. You're finding yourself with a preponderance of evidence against you that you're not walking upright before the Most High. And so how in the world do we expect to walk upright before him if we keep hanging out with the dogs? We keep hanging out with the pigs. We keep slopping around with the swine. All right. I want to read these other definitions for the Satanas from Thayer's Bible Dictionary. I think I said an adversary, one who opposes, another in purpose or act. The name given to the prince of evil spirits, the inveterate adversary of Elohim and Messiah. He incites apostasy from Elohim and to sin, circumventing men by his wiles, in other words, his trickery. He's more clever than me and more clever than you put together. And without the wisdom of Haruach and the protection of the messengers of Yahuwah, we'd all be in trouble. The worshippers of idols are said to be under his control. By his demons, he's able to take possession of men and inflict them with diseases. By Elohim's assistance, he is overcome. On Messiah's return from heaven, he will be bound with chains for 1,000 years, but when 1,000 years are finished, he will walk the earth in yet great power, but shortly after will be given over to eternal punishment. And then finally it says, a Satan-like man. In other words, a man who takes on the characteristics, who walks in the sort of persona of Shaitan. That's Satan too. That's Satanos. All right, so I think we're on verse number 11. Then the devil, I'm sorry, did I read the whole thing? Yahushua said to him, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship Yahuwah, your Elohim, and him only shall you serve. Then the devil leaveth him and said, behold, angels came and ministered unto him. And I like about this account is that our Messiah, he stood his ground. But don't forget, he was hungry, he was weak. And so sometimes, we find ourselves in situations where we're hungry and we're weak, or we're weakened, or we don't feel like up to the task. And yet this thing comes our way that's like, what is it trying to do? Is it trying to break me? And yeah, it is trying to break you. But when he was done, when he stood with all his strength, I mean, When you're fasting, sometimes you feel weak, but if this, that, or the other happens, you forget about that. And you get to jump, and you heard a funny noise, you get up and you go deal with it just like you had eaten a few minutes ago. It's amazing. So some of that is mental, some of that is physiological, and that your body was made to respond to this, that, and the other. But some of it is spiritual. And what I'm here to say is that you resist the devil in the spirit realm, set apart ones. And when it's all said and done, these messengers were sent to Mashiach to minister to him, to comfort him, to build him up, to give him what he needed at that point in time. In the same way, we find that after a trial, that the Most High blesses us with what we need. And so I just want to encourage us to hold on from that perspective. Let's go through another few of these in Matthew. If we go to chapter 12, we'll see. We'll see 12. Let's go there. What verse was it? 12 and 26. All right. So Mashiach had just cast these spirits out. You have to back up, son. All right, let's go back to 22. I know I said 26, but let's go to 22. Then was brought into him, or they brought until, oh wow, that's interesting. I just got to read 21. I know it starts with an and, but it says, and in his name the Gentiles trust. What do you do with that? What do you do with that if only certain people can trust in the Most High? The Gentiles trust. Verse 22. Then was brought into him one possessed with the devil, blind and dumb, and he healed him, insomuch that the blind and the dumb both spake and saw. And all the people were amazed and said, is this not the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard it, they said this fellow doth not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of the devils. So remember I talked about Matzma, and I talked about Satan, and now we're talking about Beelzebub. So is Beelzebub, Matzma, and Satan all the same entity? Is it an office that people sit in? Not people, the spirits sit in, and they do. What's going on here? The scripture don't give us clear answers, set apart one, so I can't give you a clear answer. And if you got insight, I want to hear it. I want to hear it. Give me feedback, because I've seen some things, but I don't like presenting half-baked things, and so or even three-quarter baked things. I like them to be baked. And so what's going on here? Now they're saying he's casting out by Beelzebub, and Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Hashatan cast out Hashatan, so literally, and I mean literally, that doesn't make sense, because Satan casting out himself. So he's saying if someone from the adversary, if the strength of the adversarial troops are casting out their own people, if it's friendly fire between the devil and his troops, then he's divided against himself. How then is this kingdom to stand? And if I, by Beelzebub, cast out devils, by whom do your children cast them out? Therefore they shall be your judges. So I like verse 27, especially because what it shows is that our Messiah wasn't the only one casting out devils. So this idea that only the followers of Jesus do that kind of thing, this kind of idea of twisting what Matthew 7 says, where he says, we cast out devils, we prophesied in your name. It's like, well, who are them? Them people are such, all of that stuff, it kind of like falls on dead ears, when there were Israelites who practiced exorcisms before Mashiach, after Mashiach, because these devilish entities were manifesting in their midst, and folk who had any semblance of righteousness and set apartness were being used in order to get them out. Verse number 28 says, "But if I cast out devils by the spirit of Elohim," now I'm going to go here and see, this is not the same Diablos, this is Daimonion. Daimonion. Sounds like demons to me, but Daimonion. So it's called a heathen god or deity in Acts chapter 17. So I thought there's only one God. It's called a devil in several other places, but in Acts 17, 1 Corinthians 10, Revelations 9, in the New Testament, it's a demon, evil spirit in Matthew 7, 9, and in Matthew 10 and 12, where we just read it from. A demoniac, being by extension a deity, devil, Elohim. I stress this a little bit, set apart ones, because when people hear the word deity, they're thinking El Elyon, and there's nothing like him, and they're right. But that's not what deity means. Deity is not isolated to the most high deity. Deity is these spiritual beings that are non-corporal, that don't have bodies, and they dwell in a realm that you don't see so clearly with your eyes, but you can discern their movements and their activities by the Spirit. So let's get this straight. This idea of a deity being, there's only one. So people say, well, is Messiah a deity? I want to open that up. My whole point is just this, that a deity is a non-corporal spirit person. And that non-corporal spirit person is a reality that exists in the spirit realm, but because it is a spirit, it likely has the ability to impact the natural realm. And if we get that straight, we're going to understand a lot more things, and hopefully, when this is all said and done, find ourselves better equipped at sort of fighting this battle that we're in, instead of, walking around like there is no battle to fight. All right. And if I, by Beelzebub, cast out devils, by whom do your children cast them out? Therefore, they shall be your judges. But if I cast them out by the spirit of Elohim, then the kingdom of Elohim is come unto you. Or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house? He that is not with me is against me, Mashiach said. And he that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad. And this was his warning to them, finally, that they need to be careful that all manner of sin and blasphemy can or shall be forgiven unto men, but the blasphemy against the Ruach HaKodesh, or the Ruach of Elohim, or the set apart Kodesh Ruach, shall not be forgiven unto men. So we see here this combination of Satan being used regarding Satan, and it's not talking about one person. It's talking about a personality that's a leader, and then those that are under his leadership, and him casting out his own people, or like I said earlier, their friendly fire against the wickedness of the team of wickedness. And you know, I think that sometimes there may be some friendly fire there, but that's a whole nother story, because what Mashiach is saying is that you all aren't making sense. You know, I'm not casting them out. I'm not troubling them. I'm not being a Satan to Satan in the sense that you think, but I'm actually on the side of light, firing against the side of darkness. All right, let's see where we are. Turn to Matthew chapter 16 with me. Okay. So this is the chapter where a little earlier, I'm going to start down in like 21. But just before this is where Mashiach asks them, "Who do people say that I am?" And Kepha comes up with, you know, "You're the son of the living Elohim." And Mashiach congratulates him, praises him, and says, you know, that this hasn't been revealed to you by flesh and blood. What does that mean, set apart? That means something happened in the spirit realm. That's where you got this witness. And so finally, we get to verse 21, and Mashiach, from that time forth, began to show unto his disciples how he must go to Yerushalayim and suffer many things of the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised again the third day. Then Kepha, or Peter, took him and began to rebuke him. So imagine this. You know, I just called you the son of the living Elohim by revelation from Elohim. And now in my natural self, in my natural butt, I'm going to rebuke you and tell you that the things you just spoke must be, you know, from where? From, I don't know, out of a garbage can somewhere. And so he rebuked them and saying, "Be it far from you, Yahusha. Be it far from you, Adonai. This shall not be unto you." But Messiah, or he, turned and said unto Kepha, "Get thee behind me." What did he call him? Satan. So we all know, or at least you better know, that he wasn't saying that Peter was the ringleader of all evil, the Lord of darkness, the prince of the power of this world. He wasn't saying that, set apart ones. And so I read this because I wanted to give you that clear contrast that when we see the word Satan, just like we did in the Tanakh, we have to get it in context and find out what's going on here. Is it an adversarial position? Is it something opposing righteousness? Or is it a soldier in the army of the kingdom of darkness? Or is it the king of darkness himself? We need to slow down and tell and be able to discern what's going on there, because depending on what's going on there determines how we address the thing. You know, if you believe Hashatan himself came into your room and began to deal with you, is one thing. If you had decided, and the Most High had given you, you know, leave to do, that you were going to move to Texas, and so you had bought your tickets, and somebody came up to you and told you, you know, you should not go to Texas, whatever, and you knew that Elohim had given you not only leave but provision and etc., and you were just walking out the instructions from the Most High, then that person was operating like a Satan. The thing that's a little bit more difficult, and the thing that we want to really ask the Most High to help us to do, is to know if some spiritual entity has entered them or is manipulating them in order that they do that. Because this is exactly what deliverance is about. And now I'm not talking about deliverance from darkness into light, which is, you know, salvation. I'm talking about deliverance from the influence of evil spirits, the deliverance from the clutches of darkness that are operating in people's lives even after they have come to know who Messiah Yahushua is. So people say that, the devil can't mess with people who saved. The devil can't mess with people who are aligned with Messiah and aligned to Elohim. But here we have Kepha, who clearly heard from Elohim what the story is, and yet, I don't know how many minutes or whatever passed, but a couple verses down, now Mashiach is rebuking him and calling him, "Get thee behind me, Satan. Thou art an offense unto me, for thou savorest not the things of Elohim, but those that be of men." What's interesting there is that this rebuke that Mashiach pours back at him, he doesn't say that you've aligned yourself with the prince of darkness. See, because most folk think that that's what the only enemy is. He says, you are thinking about those things of men. So it's like if we're not careful, we can align ourselves with the natural realm and wanting to see grandbabies and wanting to do this, that, and the other, and at the same time be offensive unto the kingdom of Elohim. And so this is why I said so much earlier in this lesson that we have to learn to submit ourselves to Elohim and trust that it all works out, because you don't always get to see it work out. You don't always know how it's going to work out. But we know that we believe and trust the Most High to work it out. And this gives us the freedom and the liberty to trust Him with our whole heart and lean not to our own understanding. In all of our ways, acknowledge Him, knowing that He will direct our paths. All right. There's one more passage that I wanted to make sure I read, and it's in Luke chapter 10. It kind of ties in with a passage in John 6, so maybe I'll read two things real quick. But in Luke chapter 10, maybe I'll just talk about it. I got the verse right here. It says in Luke 10 and 1, "And after this, the master appointed 70 others and sent them two by two ahead of him into every city and place where he himself was about to go. Then he said to them, the harvest indeed is great, but the workers are few. Therefore pray the master of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest." Now he says, what does that got to do with anything? This is a tangent lesson that I suspect will be part of the book and more than it will a video. But he sent 70, and it's like, well, why did he send 70? Why ain't he send 100? Why ain't he send 50? Why ain't he send? And so I remembered that when Jacob left Canaan and went into Mitzrayim, that it was 70 of them. Some folks say 72, depending if you read the Septuagint versus the other codex. But it was 70 or 72. How many people were in the Sanhedrin? It was 70 or 72, right? And so this 70 or 72 is important. One more 70 or 72. If you go to Bereshit chapter 10 and you count all the table of nations out, you're going to find 70. If you look at apocryphal books, and maybe it's a pseudepigrapher like Yasher, you find that Mitzrayim, that Yosef needed to understand 70 languages. All of these 70 align to something that's very clear in the scriptures, except that most versions, most English versions, or many English versions, pervert it. And it's where the Most High said that He had taken Israel as His inheritance, and as if to say that the other nations were according to the sons of Elohim, is what it says. It says according to the sons of Israel, which doesn't make any sense as a translation. I'll find that address and I'll put it up there. But my point is this, is that He sent 70 out because what Mashiach is doing, what He's doing is He's undoing the Tower of Babel. He's undoing this fracture that the enemy has sowed into the earth, and He's bringing forth that unity back under Elohim, and all of the things that are a part of that, all of the authority, all of the the righteousness and all. He's bringing that all back. He's restoring. He's reconciling all the way back to Elohim. And this is such a both powerful and beautiful picture. And I'm gonna bring that out for us line by line at some point in time. But I just wanted to throw that out. In verse number 66 in chapter 6, it says, from then on, many of his taught ones, and this is after this whole bread of life discussion where Mashiach says, I'm the bread. You know, that thing your fathers ate, they ate that manna and they still died, but I'm the bread of life. And if you don't eat me, or eat my flesh or drink my blood, then you don't have no part in me. But many of the taught ones withdrew and now were walking with him anymore. Yahusha said, therefore, to the 12, do you wish to go away? Then Shimon Kepha answered him, saying, Master, to whom shall we go? You possess the words of everlasting life, and we have believed. And we know that you are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim. Yahusha answered them, have I not chosen you, the 12, and one of you is the devil? Was he saying one of them was this master criminal, Hashatan? We know who he's referring to. He's referring to Yehuda or Judah, right? Judas. And so, but he says that one of you is the devil. He was not speaking of Yehuda from Kiriel, the son of Shimon, for he, one of the 12, was about to deliver him up. And so oftentimes, even in the midst of righteous congregations, righteous families, righteous gatherings, there's somebody in there who's not completely giving themselves into the Most High. And they're there, I don't know all of why they're there, but I've seen them be tempters and troublemakers, and I've seen them sow discord, and I've seen them cause adultery, and I've seen them do all manner of things that seem to be of the enemy. And in this case, Mashiach actually picked this cat. And one of them was the devil. And he's like, one of y'all is the adversary. One of y'all is Hashatan, Diablos, to the plan and plot that I ultimately are doing. But the truth of the matter is he fit because he had to be betrayed. And so why do I say that? Because I want you to understand, as we're closing out today in this message, I want you to understand that the things that Hashatan is allowed to do, as harmful as they might seem, as rude, as painful, as heartbreaking as they may seem, they fit. Else they would not be going on. They fit. Mashiach couldn't have just gone to Pilate and just said, hey, I'm the king of Israel. You hooked me up on that stake and I appreciate it. Here's a couple of denarius for it. That's not how it went. So for me, I wanna try my best to not be that devil in the midst. I want you to try your best to not be that devil in the midst, because he got what he had coming. And so it's not like he gets a play on being wicked, being an adversary in the short scheme, even though he fit into the big scheme. It's not like he got a play on it. And so all of the people who've harmed you or harmed congregations that you've been in, all of the people who've been troublemakers, and for whatever reason they were there, oftentimes they get what they got coming. Even though they may have served a purpose like a forest fire in order to bring forth nutrients to the earth, in order to renew that forest, the ash was used to burn and to put new nutrients back into the ground. So that's a little physiological, so I'm sorry for that. But here's what I'm trying to say, is that the Mashiach picked one that was the devil. And that was because he needed that purpose to come forth. It's curious to me that the Tanakh picture, that going back to 2 Shemuel 24, I think it is, picture that we see that the displeasure of Yahuwah burned against David, and First Chronicles it says that Hashatan, you know the story because you watched the video, but the Most High is using the devil to. He's a tool. He's a necessary evil in the sense that his work is used to what do you call it, to separate the wheat from the tares, so that they become obvious, to strengthen our faith, to make us know that we believe what we believe, to give us that opportunity to say, man, the Most High has really anchored himself into me, and I really appreciate it. So until next time, I want to say shalom to you. Torah for listening, and look out for my book. I'm not sure when it'll be, but I'm still working through it, and I'll keep you all posted about it. In the name of Messiah Yahushua, bless you all, and until next time, shalom.